Hello, hello, and welcome all. Happy Friday. We are right smack dab in the middle of Women's History Month. And as promised, your girl, Angel Henry, is here on Filter Free Friday, talking about how women of color navigate their workspace in corporate America for their career progression. So thank you for joining me again. For those of you who are new here, I am Angel G. Henry, author of Dents in the Ceiling, Tools Women and Allies Need to Break Through. And although I am an expert, although obviously personally, in addition to the research that I've done over the years on how African-American women navigate the workspace, I know for sure that all different women of color have different nuances and different things that they need in order to navigate their careers. So I am so pleased to have a good friend of mine and colleague and fellow Agilist, Dimple Shah, to join us to talk about her experiences in the workplace and to share with others and to give us insight about what it means to uniquely be a woman from South Asian descent working in corporate America these days. So with that, Dimple, thank you so much for being here and for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Angel.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're just going to get right down to it. Please introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit of your backstory about how your career got started. Was it in another country and then you transitioned here to America, or did you start here in America from the beginning?
Well, I'm born and raised in India, and I did my bachelor's in computer science in India. Started working over there, and then my fiance at the time, he was here doing his master's. So he proposed to me when he was here and while I was working in India. And one of the first questions I asked him before I said yes is, okay, when he comes back home. But well, almost 18 years later, I'm still here. So I like to call in as I'm one of the very few fortunate people in the world who get to call two places home. So this has been my home for almost 18 years.
Yeah.
As is my home back home in India, where my roots were.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I love that. I didn't know that was going to start off like a love story, but I absolutely love that. Okay. So talk to us about that. I can't even imagine what that transition is like, just to go from one country to another in the work world. So talk to us a little bit about some of the customs in terms of workplace, etiquette and norms and things like that may have been different in India than they were here in America.
Well, I came here, did my master's first. So my first exposure to this country was student life. It was great considering I started in Springfield, which is a very small town in Missouri. And I still call that as my hometown in the US. But when I transitioned into a corporate world, I would say I got lucky because my first full-time job here in the US was very much here in Indianapolis, and it was a smaller company and they were incredibly nice people. So it did not really take much time for them to absorb me. I was the only person from India in that company. So considering I was the only one, I never once felt out of place. They were very welcoming. I had different mix of experiences, just like any immigrant might have. But overall, it was really, really good. So pretty much the people were nice. They were asking all sorts of questions, and you might have, I don't know if you've experienced that or not, but one thing I still experience is people often think before asking questions to me about my country, my culture, my roots. So I feel like it's upon me to take that first step to make them feel that, oh, you can ask me anything. I'm happy to answer any questions I have. So work aside, I used to love what I did. But apart from that, I created like really strong relationships there where people felt that they could ask questions about my religion, my country, my culture, my upbringing, some of the norms and things like that. So for the most part, I would say that it was really.
I love that. Thank you, because this starts off on a phenomenal note, which gives a picture of what it's like when organizations get inclusion and belonging correct. and how it makes everyone feel, right? So from your perspective, you didn't feel tokenized, you didn't feel singled out, you were open to asking questions, and you had a true relationship with your peers to where it didn't feel abnormal or odd or uncomfortable, to where it really, obviously, I mean, you're still smiling, and to this day, that experience obviously still sticks out about how good it was. So thank you so much for
Absolutely.
yeah.
Still have some great friends from that very first job I had in this country.
There
And
you
that's
go.
one of the reasons that I always say that inclusion is a two-way street. Oftentimes, inclusion is viewed as, oh, I look, I feel, I come from a different place.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna sit here and, it's your job to make me feel included. But I feel like it's a two-way street. If I open the door for you, then it'd be easier for you to walk into that door. Yeah. So it's just as simple as that. And I think we as in me and my organization and these friendships that I've created, we just had this unspoken, I guess, the rule that, well, stop when you have to, ask open questions. And, that's how we build friendships.
Wow. Okay. Like appropriate work boundaries, relationship building, open-hearted, good people, obviously. Okay. Wonderful. So let's swing the pendulum the other way and talk to us about an experience or a situation where, again, you're at work, but it's the opposite. You're engaged in a situation to where you don't have that open-heartedness, and you don't feel that the person is coming from a good place.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if a person would not come from a good place. So first that is what I believe. And that is what we often try to talk about as well, right? Assume positive intent. And the reason why I said that it's up to me to open that door as a newbie is because people often don't know what they don't know, right? So when they make certain comments, or when they try to view you as maybe a title or a role that you hold in a corporate world, they often don't know, they're not aware of all of those experiences and all of those thought processes that build us and make us who we are. So sometimes, well, at most times, I don't know whether this is fortunate or unfortunate, most of the times, a lot of work is on us to help them understand on what is it that they are not seeing. And sometimes they acknowledge that, sometimes they don't. Well, it's going to be both sides, right? But yes, I have a couple, well, more than a couple, but a couple pop in my mind where, which I also shared in my talk, and that is very, very close to me, is I had this picture of our Lord, our God that I worship. And suddenly at the same workplace, someone comes on and they jump as if they've seen a ghost, and they're like, oh God, what the heck? And I just said with a very normal and, trying not to show I was offended, that, well, that's my God. And after that experience, I never had a picture of that God on my wallpaper, because then it's just, I was not ready for that experience again. That person simply walked away. But again, the reason why I said a couple of experiences is because more recently, in the past, I think it was been a couple of years now, someone made a comment while we were in a group session or something, and we were just joking around. And they just said something not work related, but something that brought memories on how I've been raised as a person. Okay. And I had some great memories, but that was completely misinterpreted on where they were coming from, because they were from a different place. So I just gathered the courage and I reached out to them after the session. It's like, hey, because we were extremely good friends. Okay. And I shared them, well, this comment of yours, this is how it landed on me. And they profusely apologized. Okay. They clarified their intent. They explained on how it used to be in their country. And I explained how it landed on me, because how it used to be in my country. Okay. And we're still great friends. Okay. So it's a balance. Yeah. It depends on where the person is at that time, with respect to their mental, maybe emotional state.
And the emotional intelligence, right? If you want to risk
intent, I guess move on. Because the more we get a chance to educate everyone, the more awareness we spread.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a scenario that I found, and that it kind of took, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. So I'm, an agile leader of a team. My goal is to bring all these different folks together, right? Business analysts and the developers, the architects, bring all these folks together. And our quality analyst was a woman from Pakistan, I believe. And I may be misremembering, but I believe so. And then two of the other lead developers were contractors. So there's that layer of I'm an outsider there too, right? They're contractors. So they're not a part of the organization per se. And so they're walking carefully, right? But they're the lead developers, right? So I really need their opinion. I really need them to say if this is architecturally sound and all that good stuff, right? So I'm you'll laugh at this, Dimple. So I'm going over, I'm reintroducing the principles because our team was kind of getting a little loosey-goosey. So I'm reintroducing the principles and trying to reinforce open transparency. Let's all talk. If there's something on the table, if we made a decision and we're going down the wrong path, I expect anyone to speak up, right? And the lead developer and the QA, like, they kind of pulled me to the side and they were like, Angel, not gonna ever happen, honey. Like, we are never in a meeting in front of our supervisor, in front of our boss, going to ever challenge him in a meeting openly. That's just not part of our culture.
Right.
And I was like, oh, here I am trying to create a team culture, but it was in direct conflict with some of the personal values that they held because of their culture from India. And I was like, oh, so talk to me about that situation in terms of, what maybe I could have done. It's all hindsight, but what I could do to make that better. How do our American values might end up kind of clashing with those from India? How do we navigate that? Give us some help.
So one of my coaches used to say, always use the advanced communication technique of just talk. And I feel like it's so golden because I feel like I can apply it to any situation, anytime. So if you were to ask me just one feedback, that is what I would give you, because there are people, as you aptly said, they have different cultural values and they hold certain norms close to their minds and their heart because of the way they've been raised. Like, I was talking to someone, she is from Nigeria, and she's my mentee. And I said, well, please call me Dimple. And she's like, no, our culture is very similar. I can't call you Dimple. I'm going to call you ma'am. You know that, right? And I was like, okay, well, we'll figure out a new word as and when we build relationships. But trying to understand where people come from culturally and how diverse their backgrounds are, it's easier for me, of course, because I know I've worked there. That's an additional benefit for me, advantage for me. But for someone who works with someone who is completely from a different country, I'd say just maybe do a one-off before you're just bringing them into a larger session, and try to understand them, try to see where they're coming from. I know, especially after pandemic, it's just the world has gotten so small. Now you are on one session and there are 20 people from like 5 different countries.
Yes.
Right. So
yes.
Taking that a little bit of time and knowing how best they might want to be approached in a larger team setting, I think that goes a long way.
I like that. That's great advice. I like that a lot. That is great. Slow down and be proactive about having that one-on-one discussion and meeting with your teammates before you start to go off and create team cultural norms. Let's hear. Okay. And so then the last question is, let's say that you have a mentee that is introduced to you new in your organization, and she's from the exact same hometown that you're from back in India. And you're like, oh, okay. And she asked you, ma'am, how do I go about navigating this American culture? It's so new to me. What are some of the unique pieces of advice that you would give to her that you might not necessarily think to give to a woman that's, you know, Caucasian or, you know, someone else from another country, something unique to your culture?
Yeah, yeah. So my other mentee is an Indian, and she does look like me, and she comes from India. And
Okay.
it's just so timely, Angel, because we had this exact same conversation last week, where
Oh,
we've
okay.
been chatting for almost 6 months now, and she every time she reaches out, she's like, "Oh, I don't want to waste your time. Oh, it's okay. I don't have anything to talk about." And she would hesitate. And I always used to make sure I used to check on her. And then finally, about a month or so back, she's like, "Oh, I'm now going to try and come out of my shelf and I'm going to reach out to you monthly. Is that okay?" So we met last week after a long hiatus. And I said, you have something that I didn't have. You have a person who just looks like you, comes from a place where you've been, and have been fortunate to have had so much help, and a little further along where you are, you want to
Yeah.
be. So use that, and not just to people who look like me, but just in general, even women. And then add additional layer to women of color. We don't easily ask for help. It's a general human nature that a human being just they have difficulty asking for help just to begin with. And
Yeah.
now add another layer again of diversity in there for
Yes.
women and then color. And then the first job that you did, I told her, actually both of them, is for you to reach out. It's already phenomenal. You had the courage to reach out, and you wouldn't have known if we were able to connect with each other if you wouldn't have reached out. So just my advice to anyone is, and I say that all the time in any kind of coaching scenario I'm in, is if you think it's the ethically right thing to do, then just do it. Because you at least have a 50% chance of success if you do it. If you don't, then there's definite answer is no. So that's one. For two is, especially for, again, women and women of color, we always feel that we are in a place where we have to catch up and we have to do so much more for us to be able to be visible, So my advice is, if you are at a place where you're struggling, then find someone, a mentor.
Don't do it
And that
alone.
helps leaps and bounds, because even if you don't want their advice, you just need a sounding board for a person who listens to you, who can understand
Absolutely.
what you're going through.
Yeah.
Maybe help recalibrate those expectations that you have, hold a mirror for you as and when you need and such.
Yeah.
But yeah, just take that step, gather the courage to take that step would be the
Yeah.
first and the very important thing that you have to do.
Yeah. Now, out of curiosity, I know that's something that's taught in our culture to African American women is you have to be twice as good to get half as far. Is that something that you're all are taught as well, or no?
It has changed, and I'm so
Okay.
proud. It has changed since the past few years. Even when I was working back home in India, there's so many more girls in STEM. That's
Okay.
been encouraged a lot. But I think a lot of this is self-imposed, Angel. I think it's more than what the society asks for us. A lot of it is just our self-imposed restrictions that we put on ourselves,
Yeah.
thinking that, oh, maybe I'm not that good, or that imposter syndrome. I know I've been struggling for that for like very, very long time again, when my coach finally called me out on that. So we all have faced it one way or another. But yeah, no, when I go back home, I just now I see a completely different India, where like girls are not just encouraged, they're pushed into getting whatever they want, and women in STEM and
Okay.
things like that. Speaking up, whatever it is, I just
Yeah.
don't see a whole lot of what I used to see back then,
One wonderful way to end this segment. That is extremely positive, hopeful that you're seeing that change. That is wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with myself and the audience. That's really a good way to end. So thank you again, Dimple, so much for your time. Every time I talk with you, I always learn so much. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being another woman in tech, another agilist. and just simply another great person that is leading with a good heart and good intentions to make not just your world a better place, but a better place for our children and the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you for those kind words, Angel. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. The pleasure was all mine. It's always so much fun chatting with you.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. Bye, y'all. Don't forget, take next Friday, 10:30 Eastern, 12:30 Eastern, excuse me. Same time, same bat channel. See you then.